Dr. Yuna stood at the viewing window of Nexus Prime, watching ships from dozens of worlds dock at the massive space station. Each vessel looked different from the others. Some were long and thin like metal snakes. Others were round like giant bubbles. A few had wings that made no sense in space, but looked beautiful anyway. She had been traveling for 3 months to reach this place. Earth's fastest ship had brought her here, but it still felt small compared to the alien vessels outside. The station itself was bigger than any city on Earth. It spun slowly in the darkness, creating artificial gravity for the thousands of beings who lived and worked inside. "Nervous?" asked Captain Ji-won, walking up beside her. He was the commander of the Earth destroyer that had escorted Yuna here. His ship, the Soul's Pride, was docked nearby, looking tiny next to the alien craft. "A little," Yuna admitted. She was carrying humanity's future in her briefcase. Inside were documents, videos, and data files that showed everything humans had achieved. Art, music, science, philosophy, and proof that Earth deserved a place among the stars. "You'll do fine," Ji-won said. "Earth picked the right person for this job." Yuna hoped he was right. She was a scientist first, a diplomat second. She studied alien life forms and had spent years learning about the different species in the galaxy. But talking about them in a lab was different from standing in front of them and asking for humanity's place at their table. The Galactic Council had existed for over 10,000 years. Most of the member species had been traveling between stars longer than humans had been building cities. They had rules, traditions, and ways of doing things that seemed strange to human minds. Getting accepted usually took centuries of proving yourself worthy, but Earth was asking to be accepted in just 50 years after first contact. It was bold, maybe too bold. Many species thought humans were moving too fast, growing too quickly, and asking for too much. Yuna walked through the station's corridors toward the council chambers. The hallways were wide enough for species that were much larger than humans. Some aliens she passed were twice her height. Others moved on 6 legs or floated in special suits filled with gas. A few looked almost human, while others were so strange she couldn't tell which end was their head. Most ignored her completely. To them, she was just another representative from a minor world. They had seen thousands of species come and go over the millennia. Very few ever mattered. The council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of seats arranged in circles, each designed for different types of beings. Some seats were filled with water. Others had special lights or temperature controls. At the center was a raised platform where speakers would present their cases. Yuna took her assigned seat in the outer ring, where new applicant species sat. Around her were representatives from other worlds hoping to join the council. Most had been waiting for decades or centuries for their chance to speak. The session began with routine business, trade disputes, territory disagreements, and scientific cooperation treaties. Yuna listened carefully, trying to understand how decisions were made and who held real power. Finally, her name was called. She walked to the center platform, feeling hundreds of alien eyes watching her. Some were curious, others bored, and a few seemed hostile. "Honored council members," she began, her voice carried by translation devices to every seat in the chamber. "I am Dr. Yuna, speaking for the planet Earth and all humanity. We come before you not as conquerors or beggars, but as beings who wish to contribute to the galaxy's future." She activated her presentation. Holographic images filled the air above. The platform, human cities, art galleries, laboratories, and space stations. Pictures of children learning, scientists discovering, and artists creating. Humans are young compared to your species, she continued. We have only reached the stars in the last 50 years, but in that time, we have built colonies on 12 worlds, developed new technologies, and solved problems that seemed impossible. The images changed to show human innovations, medical devices that could heal injuries thought permanent, computer systems that could process information in new ways, space drives that were more efficient than older designs. We do not claim to be superior to anyone in this chamber, Yuna said, but we believe that new perspectives make everyone stronger. Humans think differently than other species. We solve problems in ways that might surprise you. We adapt quickly to changing situations. Some council members leaned forward with interest. Others whispered among themselves. A few looked annoyed that this young species dared to suggest they had anything valuable to offer. Yuna showed videos of human music, from simple folk songs to complex symphonies. She displayed paintings, sculptures, and poetry. She explained human philosophy and ethics, showing how Earth's people had struggled with questions of right and wrong for thousands of years. Art and beauty matter, she said. They are not just decoration. They are how we understand ourselves and our place in the universe. Human creativity might offer new ways of seeing old problems. The presentation moved to human science. Medical advances that had eliminated diseases, engineering projects that turned deserts into gardens, space exploration that had mapped dangerous regions other species avoided. Humans are curious, Yuna explained. We ask questions that others might think foolish. We explore places that seem too dangerous. We try solutions that seem impossible. Sometimes we fail, but sometimes we discover something wonderful. She talked about human cooperation during disasters, how entire cities worked together when earthquakes struck, how nations that had been enemies joined forces to fight diseases or explore space, how humans would sacrifice their own comfort to help strangers. We are not perfect, she admitted. Humans make mistakes. We sometimes fight among ourselves. We have done things we regret, but we learn from our errors, and we try to do better. The presentation ended with images of Earth itself. Blue oceans, green forests, white clouds, and brown continents. Cities full of light at night. Children playing in parks. People of different colors and cultures working together. Earth is our home, Yuna said. But the galaxy could become our home too if you will have us. We offer friendship, cooperation, and new ideas. We ask only for the chance to prove ourselves worthy of standing beside you. She returned to her seat, heart pounding. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then the questions began. Some were hostile. Why should ancient civilizations make room for newcomers? What could humans possibly teach species that had existed for millions of years? Why was Earth rushing to join instead of waiting its turn? Others were more curious. How had humans advanced so quickly? What made their problem-solving abilities different? Could human creativity really offer new solutions to old challenges? Yuna answered each question as honestly as she could. She admitted human limitations while highlighting human strengths. She showed respect for older civilizations while arguing that youth and experience could learn from each other. When the session ended, she felt exhausted but hopeful. Some council members had seemed genuinely interested in humanity's application. Others remained skeptical, but that was expected. As she walked back to her quarters, Ambassador Taiho approached her. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. His species, the Dominari, were among the most powerful members of the hegemony faction. An interesting presentation, he said, his voice smooth and polite. But perhaps premature. Earth is very young to seek full council membership. All species were young once, Yuna replied. True, but most took thousands of years to mature. Humans have been spacefaring for less than a century. Perhaps protected status would be more appropriate. The hegemony offers guidance to developing worlds. Yuna had studied the hegemony's protection system. Protected worlds gave up independence in exchange for security. They could not make their own treaties, develop their own military, or refuse hegemony demands. Thank you for the offer, she said carefully. But Earth values its independence. Taiho's expression did not change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Independence can be dangerous for those unprepared to handle it. The galaxy has many threats that young species do not understand. We prefer to face those threats as free beings. I see. Taiho was quiet for a moment. I hope Earth's confidence does not lead to regret. Sometimes protection is offered out of kindness. Sometimes it must be imposed for everyone's safety. He walked away, leaving Yuna with an uncomfortable feeling. The words had sounded like a threat, though spoken politely enough to avoid offense. Back in her quarters, she sent a message to Earth. The presentation had gone well, but the real work was just beginning. She would need to build support among moderate species while avoiding giving the hegemony an excuse to act against humanity. As she prepared for sleep, Yuna looked out at the stars and thought about home. Earth seemed very far away, and she suddenly felt very alone. 3 days passed quietly after Yuna's presentation to the council. She spent her time meeting with representatives from smaller species, building support for humanity's application. Many were interested in Earth's fresh perspective, though few were willing to openly oppose the hegemony's wishes. Yuna was reviewing notes in her quarters when the light suddenly went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in dim red light. She reached for her communicator to call station security, but before she could activate it, she heard a soft hissing sound. The air near her desk began to shimmer. Something invisible was moving toward her. Yuna's training kicked in immediately. She had studied dozens of alien technologies, including cloaking devices and energy weapons. This was an attack. She rolled behind her desk just as a beam of purple energy passed through the space where she had been standing. The beam hit the wall and left a perfectly round hole. Whatever weapon this was, it would have killed her instantly. Yuna pressed her emergency beacon and crawled toward the door. The shimmering air followed her movements. Her attacker was still hunting her. She grabbed a metal tray from her dinner and threw it across the room. The tray passed through empty air, then suddenly stopped and fell to the floor. The invisible attacker was right there. The door to her quarters opened and station security rushed in. 2 guards in heavy armor, weapons ready, but they could not see the threat any more than Yuna could. "Invisible enemy!" she shouted. "Energy!" Weapon. Probably Silas Tech. The guards immediately activated their threat scanners. These devices could detect heat, movement, and energy signatures, even through cloaking. One guard pointed his weapon at apparently empty space and fired. Sparks flew as his blast hit something solid. A figure suddenly appeared as its cloaking device failed. The attacker was tall and thin, wearing dark armor that covered its entire body. Its face was hidden behind a smooth mask with no features except glowing red eyes. This was definitely Silas technology. The assassin raised its weapon toward Yuna, but the second guard was faster. His stunner beam hit the attacker center mass, sending it crashing to the floor. The mysterious figure twitched once, then lay still. "You see it dead?" Yuna asked, still hiding behind her desk. The first guard approached carefully and checked for vital signs. "Unconscious, but alive. We need to get you out of here, Ambassador. There might be others. Within minutes, Yuna was surrounded by a full security team. They escorted her to a safe room deeper in the station while investigators examined her quarters. Captain Ji-won arrived 30 minutes later, his face grim with anger. "How did they get past station security?" he demanded. Detective Minho, the station's chief investigator, shook his head. "The attacker had perfect clearances. According to our systems, they were authorized maintenance staff. Someone with high-level access helped them." Minho was human, one of the few who had joined Nexus Prime's police force years earlier. He understood both human thinking and alien politics, making him valuable in situations like this. "What about the weapon?" Yuna asked. "Molecular disruptor," Minho replied. "It breaks apart the bonds between atoms. Very expensive, very illegal, and definitely Silas manufacture. This was a professional assassination attempt." Captain Ji-won wanted to evacuate Yuna immediately, but she refused. "If I run now, it proves that humans can be intimidated. Every species watching will see Earth backing down from the first real threat." "You nearly died," Ji-won pointed out. "But I didn't. And now we have proof that someone wants to stop humanity's application through murder rather than honest debate." The official investigation was a joke. Station administrators claimed the attack was a malfunction of maintenance equipment. They suggested that Yuna had been confused by emergency lighting and mistaken automated systems for an attacker. The unconscious Silas operative was listed as a worker who had been overcome by electrical discharge. "They're covering it up," Minho told Yuna privately. "Someone with serious influence wants this incident forgotten." "Can you prove that?" "Not officially. But I can keep investigating quietly. The truth will come out eventually." 2 days later, the cultural exchange event was scheduled to proceed as planned. Representatives from dozens of species would share food, art, and entertainment. It was meant to show the peaceful cooperation that the council promoted. Yuna attended despite security concerns. Running away would send the wrong message. She needed to show that humans could not be scared into hiding. The event was held in one of the station's largest halls. Tables were arranged in circles, with different species grouped together based on their environmental needs. Some areas had special atmospheres or temperature controls. Others had gravity adjusted for species that were much larger or smaller than standard. Yuna sat with representatives from several smaller worlds. They were discussing trade possibilities when she noticed something wrong. One of the servers moving between tables was paying too much attention to her location. Every time she moved, the server's path seemed to adjust to stay nearby. The server was humanoid, but moved with the fluid grace that marked Silas physiology. Its uniform was perfect, its credentials apparently legitimate, but something about its behavior felt predatory. Yuna quietly activated her emergency beacon, sending a coded signal to her bodyguard. Lieutenant Kyung was stationed across the room, dressed in civilian clothes to avoid drawing attention. He began moving casually toward her table. The server approached with a tray of drinks. As it bent down to place glasses on the table, Yuna saw the telltale bulge of a concealed weapon under its uniform. She started to stand, intending to move away, but the server was faster. A thin blade of pure energy extended from the server's sleeve. It was aimed directly at Yuna's heart, moving with lethal precision. She threw herself backward, but the blade was already in motion. Lieutenant Kyung crashed into the assassin from the side, knocking the energy blade off target. The weapon passed through the air where Yuna had been standing and sliced cleanly through a metal support beam. The two fighters rolled across the floor. Kyung trying to pin the assassin while avoiding the deadly energy blade. Other guests screamed and ran for exits as tables overturned and alien dignitaries scrambled for safety. Kyung was strong and well-trained, but the Silas operative was faster and had superior technology. The energy blade caught him across the chest, cutting through his armor like paper. He gasped in pain but did not let go of his grip on the assassin. "Run!" he told Yuna through gritted teeth. "Get to the Soul's Pride!" Station security arrived, but they were too slow. The assassin broke free from Kyung's weakening grip and sprinted toward a maintenance hatch. Emergency barriers slammed down, but the killer was already gone, vanished into the station's service tunnels. Lieutenant Kyung died in Yuna's arms, his last words a request to tell his family that he had done his duty. Around them, the cultural exchange event had become a scene of chaos and fear. News of the second assassination attempt spread quickly through unofficial channels. While the council maintained public silence, private communications buzzed with speculation. Who was targeting the human diplomat? Why were the attacks being covered up? What would Earth's response be? On Luna Station, Admiral Do-hyun received the report while reviewing fleet deployments. His aide, Commander So-min, watched his expression grow darker as he read the details. "Sir," she asked quietly. "Prepare the Fifth Fleet for immediate deployment," Admiral Do-hyun said. "Full battle readiness. Destination, Nexus Prime. All ships, sir, every vessel we can spare, and send a message to Earth Command. No human stands alone." Within hours, quantum communication arrays across human space carried new orders. Ships that had been on patrol were recalled. Crews on shore leave were summoned back to duty. The largest military force Earth had ever assembled began preparing for war. Back on Nexus Prime, Yuna sat in a heavily guarded room staring at Lieutenant Kyung's personal effects. His wallet contained pictures of his wife and young daughter. They would grow up without their father because he had died protecting her. "I should leave," she told Captain Ji-won. "Too many people are dying for this." "Kyung knew the risks," Ji-won replied. "We all do. That's what service means. He died so that Earth could have a voice in galactic affairs. Don't make his sacrifice meaningless." Detective Minho entered with new information. "I've been tracking the assassin's escape route. They had help from inside station security. Someone provided access codes and disabled surveillance in key areas. Can you identify who?" "Not yet, but I'm getting close. There's a pattern to the security failures. Someone with administrator access is covering the assassin's tracks." Yuna looked out at the stars through the room's small window. Somewhere out there, Earth's fleet was preparing to come for her. The question was whether they would arrive in time to prevent a third attempt on her life. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humans. They did not abandon their own, no matter the cost. The first sign that everything had changed came from the station's long-range sensors. Technician Hanbin was monitoring routine traffic when his screens suddenly filled with new contacts. Ships were appearing at the edge of the system, emerging from quantum slip space with the precise timing that marked military operations. "Sir," he called to his supervisor, "we have multiple vessels incoming, configuration unknown." The supervisor looked at the sensor data and felt his blood run cold. 12 massive signatures moving in perfect formation. These were not merchant ships or peaceful explorers. These were warships, and they were heading directly for Nexus Prime. Within minutes, alarms were sounding throughout the station. The Galactic Council's emergency session was called to order as reports flooded in from across the system. Earth's Fifth Fleet had arrived, and they had brought enough firepower to level a small moon. Fleet Admiral Jung-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the dreadnought Incheon's Vengeance, watching Nexus Prime grow larger on the main screen. Behind him, his officers worked quietly at their stations, preparing for whatever came next. "All ships report ready, sir," his aide informed him. "Open a channel to all frequencies," Admiral Jung-ho ordered. "Let everyone hear this." The communication array activated, broadcasting his message to every ship, station, and listening post within light years. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of Earth's full authority. "This is Fleet Admiral Jung-ho of the Earth Defense Force. Ambassador Yuna remains under Earth's protection. Any further attempts on her life will be considered acts of war against humanity. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact." On Nexus Prime, the reaction was immediate and intense. Species that had never seen human military power suddenly found themselves staring at one of the most advanced fleets in the galaxy. The ships were sleek and deadly, their hulls gleaming with armor that incorporated the latest human metallurgy advances. The dreadnoughts alone were larger than most species' entire space forces. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a planet's surface, and they had quantum drives that could outrun almost any pursuit. The battle cruisers were smaller but faster, designed for the kind of close combat that humans seemed to prefer. In the council chambers, panic was barely controlled. Representatives who had dismissed humanity as a minor species now faced the reality of Earth's military strength. These were not the primitive ships they had expected from a young civilization. Counselor Subin of the hegemony demanded immediate answers. "This is an outrageous violation of neutral space. No single species may deploy military forces in Council territory without permission. Earth was not asked for permission when assassins were sent after our representative," replied Ambassador Yuna, who had been brought to the council chambers under heavy guard. "We are merely ensuring that our diplomat can complete her mission safely." The hegemony representative's forearms gestured angrily. The alleged attacks were investigated by station security. No evidence of assassination attempts was found. Detective Minho stepped forward with a datapad in his hands. "Actually, Counselor, we have recovered substantial evidence. Molecular disruptor fragments, Silas technology signatures, and security footage that someone tried very hard to erase." "Impossible," Subin insisted. "Station records show no such incidents." "Station records have been altered," Minho replied calmly. "I have backup copies of the original files, including video of both assassination attempts. Would the council like to review them?" The chamber fell silent. Several species had been quietly supporting the hegemony's position, but none wanted to be caught defending attempted murder on official record. Yuna seized the moment. Earth came here seeking peaceful membership in the galactic community. We have been met with violence and deception, yet we still prefer diplomacy to war. Our fleet will remain in defensive positions as long as I am allowed to complete my mission without further interference. Admiral Jung-ho's message had been heard across the galaxy, and reactions were pouring in from dozens of worlds. Some condemned Earth's show of force, but others were quietly impressed. Many smaller species had been intimidated by the hegemony for centuries, and seeing someone stand up to them was inspiring. The moderate faction, led by Counselor Yunji of the Collective, called for calm discussion. "Perhaps we should focus on the real issue here. If assassination attempts have indeed been made against Ambassador Yuna, we must investigate thoroughly and hold the responsible parties accountable." "There is no proof of any attacks," Subin repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. Minho activated, His datapad and holographic images filled the air above the council floor. Security footage showed the first assassin entering Yuna's quarters with a molecular disruptor. The second video captured the attack during the cultural exchange, including Lieutenant Kyung's heroic sacrifice. "This is proof," Minho stated. "Station administrators have been covering up these incidents. Someone with high-level access has been helping the assassins and destroying evidence." The impact on the council was immediate. Representatives who had been neutral began asking pointed questions. Why had these attacks been hidden? Who had authorized the cover-up? What other incidents had been concealed from council oversight? Councillor Subin tried to regain control of the situation. Even if these regrettable incidents occurred, they do not justify the deployment of a military fleet in neutral space. Earth must withdraw its ships immediately. Fleet Admiral Jung-ho's response came through the communication system, broadcast live to the entire council. Earth's fleet will remain in position until Ambassador Yuna's safety is guaranteed. We do not negotiate with terrorists, regardless of their political position. The word terrorists hit the chamber like a physical blow. No one had ever applied that term to hegemony actions before. It was accurate but dangerously provocative. Captain Ji-won, monitoring the situation from his ship, reported new contacts on long-range sensors. "Admiral, we have incoming vessels from multiple vectors. Hegemony fleet elements, moving to intercept." "How many ships?" Admiral Jung-ho asked. 18 confirmed, possibly more behind them. Mixed configuration, but definitely. Military. The hegemony was calling Earth's bluff. They had assembled a superior force and were moving to drive the human fleet away from Nexus Prime. Their message was clear: back down or face destruction. On the station, Yuna felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. Two fleets were about to clash because she had refused to accept hegemony protection. Lieutenant Kyung had already died defending her. How many more would follow? "I should leave," she told Captain Ji-won privately. "This has gone too far." "No," he replied firmly. "Earth doesn't retreat from bullies. Admiral Jung-ho knew this might happen when he brought the fleet here. We're prepared for whatever comes next." The moderate species were frantically trying to negotiate a peaceful solution. Councillor Yoonji proposed a formal investigation into the assassination attempts, with full council oversight and no interference from any single faction. "If the evidence supports Ambassador Yuna's claims," she suggested, "then Earth's military presence is justified. If not, they should withdraw immediately." It was a reasonable compromise, but the hegemony was no longer interested in reasonable solutions. They had committed themselves to a show of force and could not back down without losing face among their client species. Admiral Jung-ho received reports from his scouts as the enemy fleet approached. "Sir, hegemony forces are taking aggressive positions. They're preparing to attack." "Rules of engagement remain defensive," the Admiral replied. "We do not fire first. But if they attack any human ship or Nexus Prime itself, we respond with full force." The tension was building toward a breaking point. Two major fleets faced each other in space, while diplomats argued in the council chambers below. One wrong move, one misinterpreted signal, could trigger the first interstellar war in centuries. Yuna stood before the council one more time, knowing that her next words might determine the fate of both her species and galactic peace. "Earth did not choose this confrontation," she said. "We came here seeking friendship and cooperation. We have been met with violence and lies. Our fleet stands ready to defend not just me, but the principle that diplomacy should be conducted without fear of assassination." She paused, looking directly at the hegemony representatives. If you want war with humanity, you will have it. But understand this. We do not fight alone anymore. Every species that has been intimidated by the hegemony is watching. Every world that has been forced to accept protection is hoping we succeed. You will stand with us, or you will face the consequences of your choices. But either way, Earth will not back down. The third assassination attempt began that night, as 6 of the hegemony's most elite killers prepared to end the crisis by eliminating the human diplomat once and for all. Lieutenant Colonel Sun Ho had been watching the assassination team for 3 days. He knew they were coming before they even boarded the station. Human intelligence networks had improved dramatically since first contact, and Earth's special forces had learned to think like their enemies. The 6 hegemony operatives were the best money could buy. Each one was a master of stealth, combat, and infiltration. They had killed diplomats, scientists, and military leaders across dozens of worlds. Their success rate was perfect because they had never faced humans before. Sun Ho's team was smaller but had advantages the aliens did not expect. Humans were unpredictable. They used tactics that made no sense to species that had fought the same way for thousands of years. Most importantly, they were defending their own. Team leaders report, Sun Ho whispered into his comm unit. Bravo. Team in position, replied Sergeant Nari. We have eyes on targets 3 and 4. Charlie team ready, confirmed Major Hyunwoo. Targets 1 and 2 are moving toward the council chambers. Delta team standing by, added Corporal Minji. Targets 5 and 6 are heading for the ambassador's quarters. Sun Ho smiled grimly. The assassins thought they were hunting one target. They did not know that they had become the prey. The attack was supposed to happen during the emergency council session. All 6 operatives would strike simultaneously, killing Yuna in front of hundreds of witnesses. It would send a message that no one was beyond the hegemony's reach, not even under Earth's protection. The first 2 assassins moved through the station's main corridors like ghosts. Their cloaking technology made them invisible to most sensors, and their sound dampeners eliminated footsteps. They were professionals who had done this many times before. They did not notice the small human devices attached to the walls around them. Sergeant Nari's team had spent hours placing motion detectors that could track invisible targets. The assassins might be unseen, but they could not avoid disturbing the air as they moved. Contact, Nari whispered. Targets entering Section 7. The assassins paused at a security checkpoint, waiting for their inside contact to disable the scanners. A hegemony official approached the control panel and entered an override code. The pathway to the council chambers opened. That was when Nari's trap triggered. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing the assassins in a short corridor with no escape routes. At the same time, the station's atmospheric system began flooding the area with knockout gas designed specifically for their species. The 2 killers immediately activated their emergency protocols. One threw an explosive device at the nearest bulkhead, while the other began cutting through the wall with an energy weapon. They were fast and efficient, but human preparation was faster. The bulkheads had been reinforced with human military armor plating. The explosive barely scratched the surface. The energy weapon made progress but would take several minutes to cut through. The knockout gas was already taking effect. Targets neutralized, Nari reported. Moving to assist other teams. Across the station, the second pair of assassins was having similar problems. Major Hyunwoo had turned the station's own systems against them. When they tried to access the ventilation shafts, automated security turrets activated. When they attempted to use maintenance tunnels, blast doors blocked their path. "What is happening?" one assassin asked his partner in their own language. "The humans were ready for us," came the reply. "This was a trap." They were right. But the realization came too late. Hyunwoo's team had been tracking their movement since they entered the station. Every route they tried led them deeper into areas where humans controlled the environment. The assassins found themselves in the station's industrial section, surrounded by machinery and pipes. It seemed like a good place to make a stand, but Hyunwoo had chosen the location carefully. The noise of the machinery would cover human movements, and the complex layout gave defenders multiple advantages. "Surrender!" Hyunwoo called out in their language. "You are surrounded and outgunned." The assassins' response was to open fire. Energy beams cut through the air, slicing metal and sending sparks flying. But the humans were no longer where the shots were aimed. They had moved before the triggers were pulled, using tactics that seemed to anticipate every action. The battle was short and brutal. The assassins were skilled, but they fought as individuals. The humans worked as a team, covering each other and coordinating their attacks. When the shooting stopped, both aliens were unconscious and secured. The final pair of assassins reached Yuna's quarters to find them empty. Intelligence Officer Somin had relocated the ambassador hours earlier, leaving behind sensor dummies and recording equipment. The killers walked into a room designed to capture their identities and methods. Corporal Minjae's team was waiting when the assassins realized the trap. These two were the most dangerous of the group, specialists in close combat who had never been defeated in personal battle. They fought with weapons that could cut through human armor and moved with speed that seemed impossible. But humans had one advantage that no alien species understood. They fought for each other with a dedication that bordered on madness. When Private Ju Hyung was wounded, his teammates did not retreat. They became more aggressive, more determined, more dangerous. The first assassin went down when Minjae tackled him through a reinforced window. They fell together into the station's lower levels, fighting all the way. The second assassin found himself facing 3 humans simultaneously. His training had prepared him for many situations, but not for enemies who seemed willing to die rather than let him escape. "All targets secured," Sunho reported to Admiral Jung-ho. 4 alive, 2 dead. We have prisoners for interrogation. The aftermath was swift and public. Intelligence Officer Soman had insisted that everything be recorded and broadcast live across the galactic networks. The galaxy needed to see what happened when the hegemony's best killers faced human defenders. The interrogation was conducted in the council chambers, with representatives from dozens of species watching. The captured assassins, stripped of their equipment and cloaking devices, were revealed to be elite hegemony operatives. Their weapons bore official markings that traced directly back to military arsenals on hegemony worlds. "State your names and mission," Somin demanded. The first assassin remained silent. The second one spoke with the arrogance of someone who had never failed before. "We are soldiers of the hegemony. Our mission was to eliminate a threat to galactic stability. By murdering an unarmed diplomat, by ending a problem before it grows larger." Soman activated a holographic display showing the evidence collected from all 3 assassination attempts. Weapons, equipment, communications, and financial records that proved hegemony involvement beyond any doubt. "This was not the action of rogue individuals," she announced to the council. "This was a coordinated campaign of terrorism, directed by hegemony leadership against a legitimate diplomatic mission." Councillor Yoonji of the moderate faction demanded answers. Counselor Subin, how do you explain these revelations? The hegemony. Representative tried to maintain his composure, but the evidence was overwhelming. These individuals acted without authorization. The hegemony does not condone such methods. The weapons came from your arsenals, Somin replied. The operatives carry official identification. The funding was transferred from hegemony military accounts. This was not a rogue operation. The political impact was immediate. Species that had been neutral began openly supporting humanity's application. Others demanded investigations into their own experiences with hegemony pressure. The careful balance of power that had existed for centuries was suddenly shifting. But the hegemony was not finished. If they could not kill one human diplomat quietly, they would eliminate the entire human delegation and their fleet in a display of overwhelming force. Battle fleets from 6 hegemony worlds were already moving toward Nexus Prime. Sir, Captain Jiwan reported to Admiral Jung-ho. Long-range sensors show massive fleet movements. The hegemony is mobilizing everything they have in this sector. How long until they arrive? 18 hours, maybe less. Admiral Jung-ho looked at the tactical display showing enemy ships converging on their position. The human fleet was outnumbered 3-1, but they had advantages the enemy did not expect. Most importantly, they were defending something worth dying for. Signal Earth Command, he ordered. Request immediate reinforcement from home fleet and send a message to all human ships. Prepare for battle. On Nexus Prime, Yuna addressed the Council one final time before the storm arrived. The captured assassins had proven hegemony guilt, but words alone would not stop the fleet bearing down on them. The galaxy has seen the truth, she said. The hegemony uses murder and intimidation to maintain power. Earth offers an alternative. Cooperation based on mutual respect rather than fear. You must choose which future you want. Around her, representatives whispered among themselves. Some were already making preparations to leave the station before the battle began. Others were sending messages to their home worlds, requesting instructions for the crisis ahead. The trial by combat was about to begin, and the outcome would determine not just humanity's place in the galaxy, but whether smaller species would ever be free from hegemony domination. The quantum wake signature appeared first on the edge of human sensor range. Something massive was coming through slipspace, larger than anything the Fifth Fleet had brought to Nexus Prime. Admiral Jung-ho watched the readings with growing anticipation. As the signature resolved into the familiar profile of Earth's most powerful warship, Grand Admiral Wanho emerged from quantum space aboard the supercarrier Incheon's Vengeance, flagship of humanity's home fleet. Behind him came 6 more dreadnoughts, 12 heavy cruisers, and a cloud of smaller vessels that doubled the human presence in the system. Grand Admiral on deck, someone announced as Wanho materialized on the bridge via transport beam. He was older than Jung-ho, his face marked by decades of military service, but his eyes burned with the same determination that had brought humanity to the stars. Status report, Wanho ordered immediately. Hegemony forces number approximately 40 ships, sir. They'll be in weapons range within 6 hours. Station authorities are requesting all military vessels withdraw to prevent damage to the civilian population. And our response? We're not leaving, sir. Wanho smiled grimly. Correct. Earth doesn't abandon its people. In the council chambers, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Most representatives had evacuated to their ships, preparing to flee before the battle began. Only a few dozen remained, including those whose worlds had suffered under hegemony. Pressure for generations. Ambassador Yuna stood before the nearly empty chamber, knowing this might be her final speech. Outside, two fleets prepared for war while diplomats argued about jurisdiction and responsibility. "The hegemony believes that might makes right," she said to the remaining delegates. "They are correct, but they have fundamentally misunderstood what makes humanity mighty." Counselor Unji leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Other species fight for territory, resources, or glory. Humans fight for each other. Our strength comes not from superior weapons or ancient wisdom, but from the simple fact that we refuse to let our people stand alone." As if to emphasize her point, reports were coming in from across human space. Every available ship was racing toward Nexus Prime. Colony defense forces, merchant marine vessels converted to warships, and even civilian craft equipped with mining. Blazers were answering Earth's call. The first shots of the Battle of Nexus Prime came from Admiral Jisu's flagship, a massive hegemony dreadnought that had terrorized smaller species for decades. Her opening salvo was intended to destroy the human command ship and break their will to fight. The energy beams struck the Ancient's Vengeance squarely amidships, but the ship's revolutionary armor held. Human metallurgy had advanced rapidly during their expansion into space, producing alloys that could absorb and redistribute energy in ways that surprised older civilizations. "Return fire," Grand Admiral Wanho ordered calmly. The human response was swift and devastating. Instead of matching the enemy's long-range bombardment, human ships closed distance rapidly. Captain Hana of the cruiser Busan's Wrath led a charge, directly at the hegemony battle line, her ship taking massive damage but drawing enemy fire away from smaller vessels. "Hana, pull back," Admiral Jung-ho ordered. "You're taking too much punishment." "Negative, sir," came her reply. "My ship can take it. Keep hitting them while they're focused on me." The Busan's Wrath absorbed enough firepower to destroy 3 normal ships, but human engineering and crew determination kept her fighting. Her sacrifice allowed Commander Jiho to position his squadron for devastating flanking attacks on the hegemony formation. This was not how galactic warfare was supposed to work. Civilized species fought at maximum range, trading shots until one side retreated or was eliminated. Humans closed to point-blank range and kept fighting even when their ships were falling apart around them. Admiral Jisu watched in growing alarm as her tactical advantage evaporated. The hegemony had superior numbers and firepower, but human ships kept coming. When one was disabled, its crew would transfer to nearby vessels and continue fighting. When ammunition ran low, ships shared supplies without being asked. "They fight like madmen," her tactical officer reported. "No regard for proper military doctrine." "They fight like a pack," Jisoo realized. "Each ship protects the others. Each loss makes them more dangerous, not less." The tide turned when moderate council species began providing support. Ships from a dozen worlds emerged from quantum space, adding their firepower to the human fleet. These were not military vessels, but armed merchantmen and system defense craft whose crews had decided they were tired of hegemony bullying. "This is Captain Yuki of the merchant vessel Peaceseeker," came a transmission. "We stand with Earth." "Neutral. Vessel Lightbearer reporting for duty," added another voice. "The hegemony's protection is no longer welcome in our space." The psychological impact was enormous. For the first time in centuries, species were openly defying hegemony power. The careful fear that had maintained their dominance was breaking down as smaller civilizations found their courage. Admiral Jisoo found herself fighting not just humans, but a coalition of species that had been waiting for someone to show them resistance was possible. Her superior fleet was now evenly matched, and human tactical skills were proving superior to hegemony doctrine. "Fall back to long range," she ordered. "Concentrate fire on the human flagship." But the humans had anticipated this move. The moment hegemony ships began to withdraw, human fighters launched from their carriers. These small, fast craft had been hidden in the larger ship's sensor shadows, waiting for exactly this opportunity. Pilot Chewan led the first wave, her fighter screaming through space toward the enemy flagship. Behind her came dozens of other pilots, each one determined to prove that human courage could overcome any technological disadvantage. "Remember your training," she told her squadron. "Fast, hard, and together. Make them pay for every meter." The fighter attack shattered hegemony formations as capital ships turned their weapons toward the small, fast targets. But human fighters were designed for this kind of chaos. They ducked between friendly ships, used debris as cover, and coordinated attacks that overwhelmed point defense systems. Admiral Jisu's flagship took critical damage when a squadron of fighters penetrated her defenses and struck the main reactor. The massive ship began to list as power failed across multiple sections. "Sir," her aide reported, "we're receiving damage reports from across the fleet. The humans they're everywhere." It was true. Human ships seemed to be in a dozen places at once, striking fast and hard before disappearing into the battle's confusion. They used tactics that made no sense according to military theory, but proved devastatingly effective in practice. The end came when Grand Admiral Wanho made a decision that shocked both sides. Instead of pressing his advantage, he ordered a ceasefire and opened communications with Admiral Jisu. "Admiral," he said, "you fought bravely. Your people have shown courage worthy of respect. But this battle is over. Withdraw your forces, and no more blood needs to be spilled today." Jisu stared at the human commander in amazement. Her fleet was broken, her flagship crippled, and her reputation in ruins. By all rights, he should demand unconditional surrender. Instead, he was offering her an honorable retreat. "Why?" she asked. "Because humans fight to protect what we love, not to destroy what we hate. We've proven our point. The galaxy has seen that the hegemony can be defeated. Now let's see if we can build something better together." The hegemony fleet withdrew in disorder, leaving behind a battlefield that would change galactic politics forever. Species that had been silent for centuries began speaking out against hegemony dominance. Trade agreements were canceled, protection, treaties rejected, and demands made for equal representation in council affairs. Ambassador Yuna returned to the council chambers to find them packed with representatives eager to hear what humanity had to offer. The vote on Earth's membership was unanimous, but more importantly, new protocols were established protecting diplomatic immunity and limiting any single faction's power to intimidate others. Years later, Yuna would lead the reformed Galactic Council from its new headquarters on Earth. The assassination attempts that had nearly killed her were remembered not as humanity's first crisis, but as the moment the galaxy learned that some species simply could not be broken. The annual celebration, held on hundreds of worlds, bore a simple name. They sent assassins after her. Earth's reply was simple: try again. In the end, humanity had won not through superior force, but by showing the galaxy what it meant to stand together in the face of overwhelming odds. The hegemony's greatest mistake was not underestimating human technology or tactics. They had underestimated the human heart.